Okay guys, so in today's video we're going to talk very much about Hogan's right arm move and why it is still very relevant today, even though sort of teachings and methodologies seem to be slightly different. And what I mean by this is there is a lot of talk nowadays in golf instruction in the feeling of throwing the club, okay, so a very active straightening motion of your trail arm, as opposed to Hogan, who would talk more about the feeling of the arm staying bent and driving the elbow more towards the side of the body. And I think it's very important because the answer to this video in conclusion will be very subjective based upon each individual. But again, I think in my opinion, from my experience in golfers that I work with, I personally think, you know, Hogan's feeling of driving the elbow and straightening the arm in the through swing is still one of the greatest things that you can do as a golfer. The main reason why, just first of all, is when I work with golfers, I try and make a very conscious effort to keep the golfer swinging the club. So you always want to make sure that feels very much like a swinging action. Okay, I don't like to try and break the swing down too much, and that's why some of my favorite drills are just the simplest ones, which is kind of like, you know, straighten your arms on the way through, because these are sort of very simple feelings that you can actually take towards the golf course as opposed to trying to break the swing down a little bit too much. So Hogan talked a lot about, in the initiation to the downswing, the first move feeling like you're sort of driving your elbow, and then, like I said, as I've just demonstrated, straightening the arms in the post-impact position, as opposed to other teachings. Well, let's just clarify the difference. One of the things that we have to do with regards to the functionality of the right hand, well, it's got two roles. One of the roles is that it's got to keep the left arm straight. So what I'm going to do is I've got this bit of string, you guys can practice this at home, bit of rope, lassoes it together, pop my left arm through, and what the rope now resembles for you guys is it's basically going to be a left arm replacement. Okay, so you've got to sort of take hold of it to make sure that it feels like you've got an element of tension on the rope so that it's a replacement of your left hand. Now, I'll just ignore the surplus for a moment. So as we now swing back, the first thing that's really important is that you maintain width. So that basically means my right hand is in a position where it's keeping the string or the rope nice and taut, right? Not like this. Now, Hogan talks about driving the elbow like this, okay? This is absolutely fine as a feeling, okay? As long as the rope stays taut. Now, what I mean is, what won't work is if you try and drive the elbow and you do this. See the way that's gone limp. Now, why would I still prefer the feeling of driving the elbow like so? Well, the main reason is because, again, most amateur golfers have a tendency to pull down on the club like so, so the elbow splits, which gets the club shaft too vertical. What the golfers then tend to do is they don't realise that's what they're doing, so then they end up sort of turning like this and pulling down on the club, so they think they're bringing it on plane, and it gets messy. So the first thing to understand is that's why I like the idea of allowing the elbow to drop towards the side of the body like so. Now, the question then is, if I drive the elbow towards the side of my body and this goes limp, well, that's because what you need to practice is simultaneously you need to practice driving the elbow, which is Hogan's move, but simultaneously you need to make sure that your arm is straightening, because it's the composition of both that is going to give you the ability to basically keep the left arm straight, like so. So can you see the way this stays nice and taut? So what I'm trying to say is, what is happening if I get rid of the rope so it's less awkward? Two movements are happening in the start of the downswing. The first one is that the upper arm is moving back towards the side of my body, while simultaneously my forearm is moving away from my upper arm. My forearm's moving away from my bicep. Okay, so the movement is not just this, but equally it's not just this. It's both, like so. Now the reason, well, like I said to you guys, that I prefer the feeling of driving the elbow and straightening the arm is mainly to do with the simple fact that most golfers have a tendency to do this type of motion. But you guys can think about it however you want. That's the point. You know, what I'm saying is, from a biomechanical sequence, the upper arm needs to move to the side of the body simultaneously whilst the arm needs to be straightening. And that's all. If you guys like the feeling of straightening your arm from the top, as long as you're not moving the upper arm away from you, that will work just fine. If some of you prefer the idea of the feeling that your arm stays more bent and you drive the elbow, then that's absolutely fine as well. Golf is relatively subjective when it comes down to individual movements. However, from my years of coaching and my years of experience, I would definitely suggest that you are best trying to make sure that your practice sessions and your playing is as liberated as possible, because then I think you'll cross-pollinate more what you're doing in practice to the course. And that's why I still very much like to this day the feeling of driving the elbow and releasing the arms, because it's a playable swing form. See you soon.